Today I'm making a simple lunch consisting of hash browns, cheese bread, salmon, and kale. Let's get started. First, I'll preheat the oven. The cheese bread, salmon, and kale can all bake at the same temperature, which is really convenient. Next, I'll remove the plastic cover from the salmon and cut off a piece that we can bake today. I'll rinse off the salmon in the sink to clean it off and get rid of any fishy smell. Then, I'll dry it off with a paper towel. I like to pat it on both sides to make sure it's really dry. Then, I'll wash off my hands before I get them messy again. My left hand is a little bit slippery, so I'll use my right hand to unscrew the cap on the rice cooking wine. Then, I'll add a splash of that on top of the salmon and screw the cap back onto the bottle. The only other seasoning is a bit of soy sauce, and I'll rub that all over the salmon to make sure the flavor spreads out evenly. Time to wash my hands again. Next, I'll cut the rest of the salmon into smaller pieces. I'll slip them into these plastic bags, seal them up, and then pop them into the freezer so I can use them another day. Then, I'll put parchment paper on a small baking sheet for the cheese bread. This bag is gone, so I'll use the new bag. I'll look for the notch here at the top and then rip the bag open from there. I want 12 pieces total, so I'll organize the bread into 3 rows of 4. The oven is hot now, so I can put the cheese bread in and set a timer for 20 minutes. These hash brown potatoes are super easy. All I have to do right now is add boiling water and let them sit for 15 minutes. While the cheese bread is cooking and the hash browns are soaking, I can prep the kale. I'll use a pair of scissors to cut the bag open, and then dump the kale into a mixing bowl. I'll spray the kale with avocado oil, mix it up to cover the leaves as much as possible, and then sprinkle some salt on top of that. I'm going to use a bit of avocado oil here too, so the salmon and kale don't stick to the aluminum foil. I'll put the salmon in the middle of the baking sheet and then surround it with piles of kale. The kale will cook best if it's just in a single layer, but I prepared too much kale, so I'm just going to put it all on there and see what happens. It's great timing because I need to open the oven anyway so I can flip the cheese bread. Now that the hash browns have sat for 15 minutes, it's time to put them into a frying pan with hot oil. I'll use this spatula or turner to move the hash browns around and make sure they don't stick to the pan. I'm trying to get the rest of these hash browns out of the carton, but this is too wide, so maybe a chopstick will do the job. In a few minutes, everything will be ready to eat. The cheese bread is done, the salmon and kale are just coming out of the oven, and the hash browns are ready to go too. All right, let's get fancy, at least for the cheese bread and the hash browns. All right, and there we have it. Hash browns, kale, salmon, cheese bread, and reindeer joining us for lunch. The kale turned out better than I thought. It's light and crispy, almost like a potato chip. And everything else tastes great too. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.